The air was thick with dust as the archaeologist brushed away the last layer of earth. Under the pale glow of the moon, something glimmered, not gold, not jade, but a fragment of bone, its surface carved with strange, deliberate markings. The team froze. This was no ordinary artifact. This was a whisper from a world 3,000 years gone, a voice speaking across time. These were the oracle bones, relics of the Shang Dynasty, one of humanity's oldest and most mysterious civilizations. To the untrained eye, they looked like nothing more than cracked shells and scorched animal scapulae. But to historians, they were a revelation, the earliest evidence of Chinese writing, fragments of a forgotten language that once shaped an entire kingdom's destiny. Yet, there is a shadow behind their discovery. What began as a tool for kings to ask the spirits about war, weather, and harvest has become a riddle that refuses to be solved. Some inscriptions describe events that challenge what we know about history, eclipses tracked with uncanny precision, strange symbols that may record cosmic events, even references to creatures and rituals that blur the line between myth and memory. Imagine standing in a royal court 3 millennia ago. The king, draped in bronze and silk, watches as diviners heat a tortoise shell until it cracks. The sound echoes like a gunshot in the silent hall. The diviner leans in, interpreting the fractures as messages from the ancestors, guidance from another world. What if those messages were not just superstition, but something more, something we still do not fully understand? In this video, we are going to dive deep into the story of these bones, how they were discovered, what they say, and why some believe their secrets are too dangerous for the world to know. We'll explore the missing fragments, the suppressed inscriptions, and the controversial theories that suggest the Shang may have possessed knowledge far ahead of their time. This is not just archaeology. This is a doorway into the past, and perhaps into something far stranger. By the end, you might find yourself questioning whether the history we know is complete, or whether the oracle bones are warning us of something we've yet to uncover. To understand the oracle bones, we must first step into the world that created them, a world both dazzling and terrifying, where kings ruled by divine mandate and the line between the living and the dead was perilously thin. The Shang Dynasty, which rose around 1600 BCE, was not just China's first historically confirmed dynasty, it was the crucible where Chinese civilization itself was forged. Picture a bustling Bronze Age city on the banks of the Yellow River. Smoke curls skyward from massive foundries where artisans cast intricate bronze vessels, each one a masterpiece covered in swirling Taotai masks, strange, staring faces meant to ward off evil spirits. Warriors clad in leather and bronze patrol the streets, their chariots creaking as they prepare for battle. Farmers work the fertile fields outside the city walls, offering a portion of their harvest to the king, whose palace dominates the skyline like a fortress of authority. This was a society obsessed with ritual. Every aspect of Shang life revolved around communicating with the ancestors. They believed the spirits of the royal bloodline held sway over the fate of the kingdom, over rain and drought, famine and plenty, victory and defeat. To neglect the ancestors was to invite disaster. The king himself acted as the high priest, performing sacrifices and divinations to maintain harmony between the mortal and spirit realms. But this was not a gentle world. Shang religion was soaked in blood. Oxen, sheep, and even humans were sacrificed to appease the spirits. Archaeologists have uncovered mass graves filled with decapitated victims, their bones arranged in eerie patterns that hint at dark ceremonies. To the Shang, this was not cruelty, it was necessity. The cosmic order had to be maintained, no matter the cost. And it was within this intense, almost theatrical atmosphere that the oracle bones emerged. They were not casual tools but instruments of state power, consulted before wars, harvests, royal marriages, and even childbirths. Each question etched onto a shell or scapula was a plea for guidance, a desperate attempt to pierce the veil of the unknown. Official history paints the Shang as a primitive but evolving Bronze Age culture, the first step toward the great Chinese empires to come. But some scholars suggest we may have underestimated them. The sophistication of their writing, their apparent knowledge of astronomy, and the precision of their rituals suggest a level of organization and intellectual achievement far beyond what we typically associate with early dynasties. This is where the tension begins. Were the Shang merely a Bronze Age people stumbling towards civilization, or were they the inheritors of something far older, a body of knowledge passed down from a forgotten age? Every discovery we make about the Shang seems to deepen the mystery. Their art, their weapons, their rituals, they all hint at a worldview that feels strangely complete, as though it sprang fully formed from some hidden source. In this section of our journey, we are left with an image of the Shang not just as kings and warriors, but as seekers, a people desperately trying to hold on to wisdom they believed had been entrusted to them by the heavens. And it is within this world, heavy with smoke, sacrifice, and divine expectation, that the oracle bones would become the ultimate bridge between man and the cosmos. The story of the oracle bones' discovery is as strange and dramatic as the artifacts themselves, almost as though fate conspired to reveal them at just the right moment. It begins not with archaeologists or historians, but with traditional Chinese medicine. In the late 1800s, apothecaries in Beijing sold a common remedy known as dragon bones. These were ground into powder and prescribed to treat ailments ranging from fevers to nightmares. No one questioned their origin. They were believed to come from dragons, the legendary beasts whose bones were said to hold potent healing power. One day, a scholar named Wang Yirong, a man with a passion for ancient scripts, was prescribed this remedy while suffering from malaria. When he examined the so-called dragon bones, he noticed something extraordinary. The surface of the bones bore faint but deliberate carvings, not random scratches, but recognizable symbols. To Wang, they resembled the archaic characters he had studied in ancient bronze inscriptions. He realized, with a shock, that these were not just medicine. They were artifacts. Wang and his colleagues began searching for the source of these bones, tracing them back to farmers in Anyang, a region in Hunan province. The farmers had been digging them out of the ground and selling them by the cartload, unaware they were destroying priceless history. Slowly, scholars pieced together the truth. These were remnants of the Shang Dynasty, the first written records of China's earliest kings. This was no minor discovery. Until this moment, many scholars believed the Shang Dynasty was partly mythical, like King Arthur's Camelot or the stories of Homer's Troy. The oracle bones transformed the Shang from legend into fact. Here, etched into scorched turtle shells and ox scapulae, were names, dates, and events confirming that the Shang had truly existed. But the story grows stranger. Even as scholars rushed to collect and catalog these bones, many were lost. Countless pieces were already ground into powder for medicine, their inscriptions gone forever. Others vanished into private collections or were smuggled abroad. To this day, thousands of oracle bones remain scattered in museums and personal vaults around the world, a fragmented library of messages waiting to be read. And perhaps most unsettling of all, not all inscriptions have been published or made public. Some are rumored to contain content too controversial or too difficult to reconcile with established timelines. This secrecy has fueled endless speculation. What exactly do those hidden bones say, and why are they kept from the world's eyes? The discovery of the oracle bones was a revelation, but also a reminder that history is fragile. It can be lost, buried, or silenced. And in this case, it was found just in time to change everything we thought we knew about the dawn of Chinese civilization. To truly grasp the mystery of the oracle bones, we have to step inside the ritual itself, the heartbeat of Shang's spiritual life. Imagine a royal courtyard at dusk. The air is thick with the smell of burning incense and animal blood. Bronze cauldrons hiss over roaring fires, and attendants line the edges of the space, silent, waiting. At the center stands the Shang king, flanked by his diviners. Tonight, the ancestors will be consulted. The process began with careful preparation. The diviners selected a turtle plastron, the flat underside of a turtle shell, or the scapula of an ox. These were not chosen randomly, they had to be cleaned, polished, and sometimes hollowed to make them suitable for divination. The surface was smoothed like parchment, ready to receive questions that could determine the fate of the kingdom. A scribe would then carve the questions into the bone or shell using sharp bronze tools. These questions were surprisingly detailed: will it rain tomorrow? Should we launch a military campaign against the neighboring tribe? Will the queen bear a healthy son? Each query was etched with precision, almost like a legal document. The inscriptions often included the date, the name of the diviner, and even the king's own name, a remarkable glimpse into the personalities of a royal court over 3,000 years ago. Then came the most dramatic step, the heating. Small pits or hollows were drilled into the reverse side of the bone. A heated rod or brand was applied to these pits, causing the bone to crack under the stress. The sound was sharp, almost explosive, and in the silence of the ritual space it must have echoed like thunder. These cracks, branching like lightning, were believed to be the answers from the spirit world. The diviner's role was to read these cracks, to interpret the shape, direction, and intensity of each fracture. A favorable crack might signal approval from the ancestors, a jagged, chaotic crack might warn of disaster. Once interpreted, the results were sometimes inscribed back onto the bone, effectively recording both the question and the answer. This made each oracle bone not just a mystical artifact, but also an ancient data record, one of the earliest examples of a question and answer log in human history. But these were not idle superstitions. The outcomes of these divinations guided real-world decisions. If the cracks predicted victory, armies were sent to war. If they warned of famine, sacrifices were increased. Lives were literally shaped, and sometimes ended, based on what the bones had to say. For the Shang, this was not fortune-telling entertainment. It was the machinery of statecraft. From a modern perspective, it's tempting to dismiss this as primitive superstition. But consider the discipline involved, the careful record-keeping, the systematic approach, the reliance on repeatable ritual. Some researchers argue that Shang divination bordered on proto-science, an early attempt to bring order to chaos, to find patterns in nature through structured observation. And yet, there is something undeniably eerie about the process. Each crack was seen as the voice of another world, a message from ancestors who demanded obedience. The king himself would have stood there, heart pounding, as the bone split beneath the heat, waiting for the verdict that might change his dynasty's destiny. If the oracle bones were merely a record of royal superstitions, they would still be invaluable. But some of the inscriptions carved into these ancient relics hint at something far more extraordinary, and far more troubling for historians. They contain clues that seem to stretch beyond the boundaries of what the Shang dynasty should have known. Among the thousands of excavated bones, researchers have found records of astronomical events, eclipses, planetary alignments, even the appearance of comets. Some of these observations are so precise that modern astronomers have been able to date them with remarkable accuracy. Inscriptions describing solar eclipses, for example, match with known celestial events that occurred more than 3,000 years ago. This means the Shang not only witnessed these events but tracked them closely enough to create a record, suggesting a surprisingly advanced understanding of the sky. Other inscriptions go further, hinting at cycles of weather and cosmic patterns that modern science has only recently confirmed. One series of bones appears to note a recurring pattern of droughts and floods that align with long-term climate cycles. Could the Shang have observed and recorded natural phenomena on a scale that would have taken generations to notice? If so, their divinations might have been more than superstition, they could have been an early form of predictive science. But there are stranger symbols as well. Some oracle bones include characters whose meanings remain uncertain, even after more than a century of study. These mysterious marks don't fit neatly into the established evolution of Chinese writing. A few researchers speculate that they might represent older, pre-Shang symbols, remnants of a script that predates known history. If true, it could mean the Shang inherited knowledge from a culture even more ancient, now lost to time. And then there are the controversial interpretations, the ones that make historians uneasy. A handful of inscriptions, according to fringe researchers, appear to describe strange celestial phenomena, fiery objects falling from the sky, bright dragons crossing the heavens, and even visitors, whose meaning remains hotly debated. Are these purely mythological references, poetic flourishes by a diviner seeking to impress the king? Or are they eyewitness accounts of natural, or possibly unnatural, events? Mainstream scholars remain cautious, preferring to interpret these passages within the boundaries of ritual practice and agricultural society. But the very existence of these anomalies leaves the door open to speculation. Could the Shang have possessed knowledge handed down from a forgotten age? Could these bones contain encoded wisdom, astronomy, calendars, even maps, that we have yet to fully decode? Each discovery seems to raise more questions than it answers. The oracle bones are not just relics, they are riddles, challenging our understanding of how far back human knowledge might go. And for every inscription we can read, there are dozens still waiting to be deciphered, their secrets locked in bone for over 3 millennia. If the oracle bones we have today are already rewriting history, imagine what we might discover if we had them all. But here's the unsettling truth, we don't. Thousands of oracle bones are missing, some destroyed, some locked away in private collections, and some never catalogued at all. The result is a history told in fragments, with crucial pieces scattered like shards of a broken mirror. When farmers first unearthed these bones in Anyang, they sold them by the cartload to apothecaries. Entire crates of priceless artifacts were ground into powder before anyone realized their value. By the time scholars stepped in, countless inscriptions had been lost forever. What questions did those bones carry? What answers? We will never know. Even after systematic excavations began, not all finds reached public view. Some bones vanished into the hands of collectors, spirited away to Europe, America, and Japan. Museums hold many of these treasures today, but others remain hidden in private vaults, inaccessible to researchers. Occasionally, a bone surfaces at an auction, revealing inscriptions never seen before. Each new fragment feels like a ghost returning to whisper a secret, and to remind us how much has been silenced. There are also whispers, controversial and hard to confirm, that certain inscriptions have been deliberately withheld from publication. Some researchers suggest that a few bones contain material too sensitive, either because they contradict established chronology or because they describe rituals and events deemed too unsettling. Officially, these claims are dismissed, but the secrecy surrounding some collections fuels endless speculation. Consider what's at stake. The oracle bones are the earliest written records of Chinese civilization. If they contained information that challenged the official timeline, for example, references to lost dynasties, catastrophic events, or even foreign visitors, the implications would be enormous. It would mean that the foundation of Chinese history might need rewriting. This sense of incompleteness adds a layer of haunting mystery. We are piecing together the story of the Shang from what is essentially a partial archive, a library with half its pages torn out. What might those missing pages reveal? Could they hold prophecies never fulfilled, warnings ignored, or evidence of knowledge humanity was not ready to face? The oracle bones we have are extraordinary. But the ones we don't have, the ones lost, hidden, or silenced, may be even more powerful. And that raises an unsettling question: is history incomplete by accident, or by design? The oracle bones sit at a strange crossroads where science and myth collide. On one side stand the archaeologists, philologists, and historians, scholars who have spent decades painstakingly deciphering each carved character, cataloging every fragment, and placing them neatly into the narrative of early Chinese civilization. To them, the bones are invaluable but explainable, evidence of a Bronze Age people developing a writing system, organizing a state, and seeking guidance from their gods. But on the other side are the mythmakers, the seekers of forbidden history, and they see something more. To them, the oracle bones are not just records of questions asked and answered. They are keys to a lost world, maybe even to a forgotten age of knowledge and power. And here is where the debate turns from academic to almost spiritual. Mainstream scholars insist that the Shang were still firmly a Bronze Age society, their achievements impressive but not anomalous. The writing on the bones, they argue, was practical, a way to record questions, decisions, and rituals. The Shang were not proto-scientists but deeply religious people, trying to impose order on a chaotic world through ceremony. Yet some independent researchers and alternative historians push back. They point to the astronomical precision of certain inscriptions, the complexity of the writing system, and the recurring references to cyclical patterns as signs that the Shang may have inherited a far older knowledge, perhaps from a civilization that existed before recorded history. This would not be unprecedented. After all, we once believed Troy was purely myth until Schliemann dug it up from the sands. There is also the matter of myth itself. Shang legends, passed down through later dynasties, speak of heavenly visitors, divine mandates, and cosmic catastrophes. To a skeptic, these are symbolic stories meant to explain natural events. But to others, they might be memories, distorted but not entirely fictional, of encounters with forces beyond ordinary human experience. This clash between science and myth is more than just academic bickering. It shapes the story we tell ourselves about our past. If the oracle bones are merely superstition, then the Shang Dynasty represents humanity's first step toward civilization, grounded in ritual and emerging reason. But if the bones hold clues to forgotten science or lost history, then the Shang might be something else entirely, guardians of a knowledge we can barely comprehend. Each new bone that is translated becomes another skirmish in this quiet war between interpretation and imagination. And every time a translation reveals something unexpected, the question deepens: are we uncovering the truth, or just scratching the surface of a far greater mystery? If the oracle bones are as extraordinary as they seem, then perhaps they are more than just records of ritual. Some researchers believe they hold the potential to rewrite our understanding of civilization itself. This is where the theories become bold, and where history turns almost into science fiction. One of the most provocative ideas is that the Shang possessed an advanced astronomical calendar, one far more precise than we would expect from a Bronze Age society. Some inscriptions appear to track lunar cycles, eclipses, and even planetary movements with surprising accuracy. A few alternative historians have suggested that this knowledge could have been inherited from a much older culture, perhaps one that existed before the great floods and societal collapses that erased much of humanity's early history. This echoes the theory of a lost civilization, the idea that a technically advanced society may have thrived in deep antiquity, only to vanish, leaving fragments of its knowledge scattered across the world. Others go even further, proposing that the oracle bones might encode more than just questions, that they could contain an ancient form of scientific data. Could some of the inscriptions represent early weather forecasting, agricultural planning based on solar cycles, or even maps of the stars? If true, this would push back the timeline for organized science by centuries, if not millennia. There are also those who speculate about contact with outsiders, not just other cultures, but potentially otherworldly visitors. Strange inscriptions describing fiery dragons descending from the heavens or mysterious lights in the sky are sometimes interpreted through this lens. Mainstream scholars caution against reading too much into such imagery, but it is hard to ignore the similarity of these descriptions to myths from other parts of the world, myths that also speak of sky gods, celestial battles, and catastrophic events. Perhaps the most radical theory of all suggests that the oracle bones were not just for communication with the dead, they were a system of record meant to preserve knowledge through catastrophe. If the Shang believed the world was cyclical, with great disasters periodically wiping out civilization, they might have been deliberately encoding their wisdom for future generations to rediscover. The bones could have been a time capsule, a warning written in a medium durable enough to outlast stone tablets and oral tradition alike. Whether or not these theories hold up, they share one thing in common: they expand the story of the Shang beyond what textbooks tell us. They remind us that history is not static, it is a living puzzle, one that grows more complex with every discovery. And if even one of these theories is true, then the oracle bones may be one of the most important messages humanity has ever received from its own distant past. The discovery of the oracle bones was not just an archaeological breakthrough, it was a psychological shockwave. For centuries, the Shang Dynasty had been known primarily through legend and myth, its kings half remembered like shadowy figures from a dream. When the bones were finally deciphered, they transformed myth into history. Suddenly, China had a written record reaching back more than 3,000 years, a direct voice from its earliest rulers. For the Chinese people, this was nothing short of a cultural awakening. The oracle bones became proof that their civilization had one of the oldest continuous writing traditions on Earth. They confirmed the deep roots of Chinese identity, stretching back to an age when kings spoke with the spirits and destiny was carved into bone. In a nation that values continuity and reverence for ancestors, this was a powerful validation, almost a sacred moment. But the impact goes deeper than national pride. The oracle bones force us to confront a universal human question: how do we connect with our past? There is something profoundly moving about holding a fragment of bone inscribed by human hands 3 millennia ago, a message written not for us, but for the gods. It reminds us that across time and culture, humans have always sought meaning, always asked the big questions: will we survive? Are we on the right path? Are we alone? At the same time, the bones carry a more unsettling weight. If some inscriptions truly hint at knowledge we cannot explain, they challenge our confidence in the story we tell about human progress. They suggest that perhaps we are not the first to grapple with science, with astronomy, with the mysteries of existence, that there may have been others before us who understood far more than we think. This is why the oracle bones capture our imagination so powerfully. They are not just artifacts. They are mirrors, reflecting both our need for certainty and our fear that the world is far stranger than we dare to believe. And the more we learn from them, the more we sense that the final chapter of this story has yet to be written. The oracle bones remain one of the most extraordinary discoveries in human history, a bridge across 3 millennia, connecting us with the fears, hopes, and questions of an ancient people. Yet, for all we have uncovered, we are left with a haunting sense that the real story is still incomplete. The cracks in those bones do not just speak of the past, they seem to whisper to the present, daring us to look deeper. Consider this: thousands of bones are still buried, waiting to be found. Each one is a time capsule, a message from a world that has been gone for 30 centuries. Somewhere in the soil of Anyang and beyond, there may be inscriptions that change everything we think we know, about the Shang, about history, perhaps even about humanity itself. What will they reveal? Prophecies of disaster? Records of forgotten kings? Or something so strange we can barely imagine it? And then there are the bones already discovered but hidden from public view, locked in private collections, untranslated, or unpublished. What secrets lie there, concealed behind glass cases or in dusty archives? Are we being protected from something too disruptive? Or is it simply a matter of waiting for the right scholar, the right moment, for those voices to be heard again? The oracle bones remind us of something profound: history is not a fixed story, but a living mystery. Every time we think we have it figured out, some fragment from the past surfaces to challenge us, to force us to reconsider what we thought we knew. And the Shang, with their fire-cracked shells and ancestor king rituals, still hold many of their secrets close. Perhaps that is the greatest power of the oracle bones, not that they give us answers, but that they compel us to keep asking questions. They are an invitation to curiosity, to wonder, to humility in the face of time's vastness. And as long as there are bones left unbroken, cracks left unread, the final chapter of this story is still being written, waiting for someone, perhaps even you, to uncover it.